Well, hello there. My name is Mark Miles, and I love helping trainers, presenters, and facilitators generally take their results to the next level, regardless of whatever content they're teaching. I love to give them the tools, tactics, and strategies to be able to really master the delivery of their content so they become as successful as possible in whatever realm they work in. So, in today's video, I want to talk to you about the topic of how do you prevent and manage disruptive behavior in an online learning environment. Now, disruptive behavior, what is it? What could it look like? What could it sound like? Well, strangely enough, in a face-to-face environment and an online environment, disruptive behavior, so to speak, is pretty much the same thing. It's pretty much any kind of behavior that would interrupt the session and essentially interrupt your delivery of the session or interrupt other people's ability to take in the information and participate fully in the session. Now, when you are shifting from the face-to-face environment to the online environment, there's certain mindset shifts that you need to have in order to make an online delivery truly successful. And if you watch any of my other videos, I certainly go through those concepts. And some of those concepts I talk about today will certainly form the framework of what we go through. Now, over time, the more you deliver online, the more confident you will get to be able to, as I said, prevent and manage disruptive behavior. Now, it comes back to mindset, first of all, and then the strategies. It's mindset and then the strategies. Now, I've been presenting online for a couple of years now, and I find that very rarely do I ever have disruptive behavior, so to speak. And it's all because of the frameworks that I set up. And I want to invite and encourage you to grab a pen and get ready to write, because I want to share with you 6 tips on how you can set up a really powerful learning framework. So let's jump into it. So Number one, just like in the face-to-face environment, when we are delivering online, we want to definitely set up some ground rules or some rules of engagement, okay? So ground rules or rules of engagement. Now, generally, I suggest to trainers to have your stock standard, maybe 9 or 10 rules of engagement. But I want to encourage you to add in 2 or 3 more that would be very relevant to online delivery, such as number one, participate fully. All right, we always want to include that one. Next one, we want to include maybe in an online session, keep yourself on mute unless you are sharing or supporting other people. Another one, number 3, is the importance of supporting others and being there to help other people enjoy the journey as much as possible and really get the most out of the session, knowing that in online environment, it's not about us, it's about how we can support each other, all right? And really setting up that framework of supporting others. Now, next one that I really insist people always have in online delivery is give grace, give grace, give grace. It's a really, really important one. And that is all about giving understanding towards other people if there are tech issues or if somebody makes a spelling error or just something goes wrong. All right. So I really always want to set up that framework of giving grace to others. Next one, I want to set up the ground rule of if you are in the session, have your video camera on. If you're stepping away from the session, you can turn it off, but you must send a message to the presenter to let them know that you are okay. All right. I always like to set that up, but I always like to then mention duty of care, making sure that everybody is okay. All right. So setting up ground rules is really, really, really important in the online space. Naturally, in the face-to-face environment, it's really important as well. Okay. But over time, you're going to find different ground rules that you can pop in to your ground rules segment. Okay, but also after you deliver your ground rules, you may want to get your participants to write them down, or you may even want to say, all right, if you all agree to those ground rules, type agree into the chat box. All right, it's really, really important that you don't just put them up there, but you also get agreement, and that's going to lead to compliance later on. Now, when you give the ground rule, don't just say you must do X, Y, Z. You also want to include a reason behind it. So because of this reason. So For example, keep yourself on mute unless sharing, because if everybody's unmuted, it's really hard to hear everybody sharing. Okay, so it's a great way to really get buy-in and know that the ground rule isn't just because you want to insist on ground rules, it's because you want to set ground rules and help them know that it's for their benefit. Okay, so second thing that you want to do that really prevent and manage disruptive behavior is acknowledge good behavior. When it happens, acknowledge it, okay? And the more you acknowledge it, the more people are going to know what the expectations are and the benefits of performing to those expectations. So, for example, if one of your ground rules is come back from breaks on time, when people do come back from breaks on time, acknowledge it, congratulate them, and tell them that it's such a great thing that everyone's come back from breaks on time. One thing I love to do, and it's a quick tip, is when you are sending people to breaks, put in the chat box when you want them to come back. So if you want them to come back at 10:45, in the chat box, put 10:45, right? So people know exactly what the comeback time is. All right, third tip. So one of the mindset things about online delivery that we need to really embrace is that you can either deliver an online, how do I put it, a slideshow, or you can deliver an online engaging training session. Now, the key distinction of what is one versus the other is in the online space, just imagine that you are a participant. Now, if you are a participant, you can either sit there and watch the show, or you can sit there and be part of the show. And the job of a trainer is to be able to create the framework that everybody must sit there and be part of the show. And this is a distinction that many people miss. You see, if you want to create a framework or structure that everybody must be part of the show, then you need to hold that space. Hold the space. Hold the space. What we mean by that is if you ask a question and you want a response in the chat box, then pretty much you need to set up the framework that you will not move on until everybody has put their answer in the chat box. Because the moment you move on without people responding, there is an idea in the participant's mindset that they don't have to actually engage, they can just sit there and watch. And as soon as you get that crack in the system, then people go, all right, cool, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. And it's a lot harder to, as I said, prevent and manage disruptive behavior, because there's no longer an expectation of what is required by the participant. So you have to get in your mind the idea, and you have to communicate the idea throughout your training session that no one gets left behind. No one gets left behind. No one gets left behind, and you will not move on past the point until everybody responds. And when you set up that framework, you're going to have a really successful session. Okay, there's lots of other different ways that you can set that framework in people's minds, but it's really, really important that you set up the idea that you do not move on. You just don't. No one gets left behind, and you don't allow non-responsiveness, okay? So you can literally stand there and go, yeah, waiting for a couple more people to respond to the question, not moving on until everyone's responded, want to make sure everyone's on the same page, all right? And you can literally stand there for like 30 seconds or a minute, and you hold that space. It's really important that you hold the space, okay? Next thing, all right. If somebody is playing up, so to speak, or if something's going on, one of the tips that I love to give people is in the chat function, you can actually send direct messages to people, and you can actually send them a message saying, are you okay? Are you okay? I've noticed that you've got your camera off. Are you okay? Or I've noticed that you're throwing ideas out there. Are you okay? And literally just ask the question, are you okay? It's a really respectful and really polite way to check in with people and set up the expectation that what's going on right now, that's not conducive or appropriate to the training session. Next, one of my favorite things to do is with disruptive behavior, or a way to prevent it, or a way to make sure it never even happens or never even enters the sphere, is to create such engagement by moving people around. One of the really cool things about presenting on Zoom is that you can have breakout rooms. Now, breakout rooms are one of the coolest tools that you'll ever have as a presenter and trainer, and you have to get good at using them. Now, with a breakout room though, if you always put the same people with the same people, you're going to find that it's going to get monotonous and less engaging. So one of the biggest tips that I have is move people around into different breakout rooms, because you're going to find that's really going to set an expectation of, one, what's going to happen next, I don't know, and a sense of anticipation on the learner side. But also people are going to be wondering, who am I going to be with next? And even if you have a couple of people playing up, they're going to eventually be put with people that are going to be taking the activities very seriously, and they're going to reset expectations. So recommend really moving people around into different breakout rooms. Next thing, really important that you set the idea that compliance will be rewarded. And one of the ways that we can do that is actually way back before we even start the course, in what I call pre-course tasks. Pre-course tasks. Okay. So one of the things I love to do is I love to send out an email prior to the actual delivery date. And I love to ask the question, actually like 4 or 5 questions. I say, have you ever been as a participant on a Zoom session? Yes or no. Have you ever delivered on Zoom? Yes or no. Have you ever studied online before? Yes or no. And I've just got 4 or 5 questions I love to ask. Now, certainly the questions are important, but more important is that people actually answer the question. Because by answering the question, they are ticking the first box of compliance. And I like to make sure that I gather all of those responses as quick as I can. And I want to set a deadline for gathering those responses. And if I don't have all the responses, I'm going to be calling people and saying, hey, I've missed your answers here. What's going on? Are you okay? I really need that information. Because when people realize that they're going to be held accountable, or they are required to actually follow through on those tasks, they're going to realize that coming along to the learning environment is a very serious thing. Okay. And that is a great way to really set the serious framework for the learning environment that's going to happen. Okay. So next, let's deal with the very last one: how to manage online behavior that's disruptive. It's a strange one, and it may be a little bit unusual to what you expect, but the last one is, don't be a dick. Don't be an absolute dick, or don't be an absolute party pooper, so to speak. And it's a bit of a strange one, but my recommendation is that if you've done all the other things, if you've set the ground rules, if you acknowledge good behavior, if you've had the no one gets left behind attitude, if you've set the messages of are you okay, if you've set the pre-course task, so to speak, my last one is don't be a dick. What I mean by that is, if people are having jokes and having fun, that could actually be a good thing. If someone makes a joke, it's actually funny, feel free as the trainer to laugh along, because that ability to laugh and create a fun atmosphere within reason is going to go a long way to build even deeper rapport and create a fun atmosphere that people want to be part of. Now, occasionally you may need to certainly put the brakes on things, but I do want to give you permission to have a laugh occasionally. And don't be someone that, snaps too quickly. Don't be someone that goes, ah, and freaks out. Yes, we've all done it in the past, but be the kind of person that can have a laugh at themselves and allow people to have a laugh at each other as well, within the right framework, Having said that, one of the hardest things that you will face as an online trainer or online presenter is that sometimes you don't know necessarily how things are landing. How do I put it? as clearly as you would know in the face-to-face environment. So do be aware, do become very situationally aware as much as you can in terms of participants' emotional states and your emotional state as well. So just to recap, number one, set those ground rules, all right? Really set those ground rules and keep a tight learning environment and make sure everyone agrees to those ground rules. The next one, acknowledge good behavior. Next, no one gets left behind. Make sure everybody has a chance to answer your questions or do the tasks, okay? And certainly you want to manage how many people they actually have in a session, because the more people you have in a session, the harder it is to manage, okay? Next one, set and send messages of "Are you okay?" All right. And then next, set pre-course tasks. And last of all, be willing to have a laugh at yourself or allow other people to have a joke occasionally. All right. So on that note, hope you got some value from the video. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.